Hello everybody. Today we are going to be looking at settings with the current release of 04.14. I thought it would be a good time to finally go over the settings and what you can do to make Minetest run either faster if you have an older computer or run, I don't want to say slower, but run and look fancier if you have a newer, more powerful computer. So I have, just going in the settings tabs right here, I have pretty much turned everything off. So we are sitting at pretty much the barest of options. We just have really simple leaves going on right here. No smooth lighting. This is just hard lighting, I guess, is what we would call it. And now I do have my view range set to 200, I believe. Yes, 200. That you can change using the plus and minus keys on your numpad. As you go shorter, your computer has to generate less and less mesh for you to view. Of course, it also makes it increasingly difficult to play the game because you can't really see a whole lot of anything when you have it set to 20, which is the lowest setting. But you'll notice in the top left-hand corner we have the FPS speed, not just frames per second. And right now I'm going at about 197. And honestly, when I even put this back out to 200, I'm losing about 10 frames probably. So not like 184. So really, I'm not making a big loss there. When I get to someplace where I have like all of these trees, now I'm dropping down to about 150. So viewing range is something you can change to make your client run a little faster. Like now I'm back up to about 190. Because I dropped viewing range down. And this is still very playable. I mean, the mountains in the far distance there have gone to being a little hazy. And the mini-map still shows everything just as it would have before. It's not like it's not showing a chunk because it's not loaded in the view. So this would be pretty much our barest of bones settings. So let's jump back to the settings and we'll kind of go over everything that I turned off. So turned off everything here and put this to simple leaves from fancy leaves. And now it doesn't want to go away. And then in advanced settings, you just go to client, graphics, in-game, basic, connected glasses disabled, smooth lights disabled. You can actually turn clouds off altogether. I did turn it down to the 1D clouds. Would it be? I guess it'd be 2D clouds. But 3D clouds will get distance. That makes it run a little slower, so I had that turned off. And then the other thing you would want to change, obviously if you have an older computer that's not handling processing everything very well, you would want to lower your maximum FPS, which is under the client, graphics, in-game, advanced, maximum FPS. You would probably want to drop that to, whatever the FPS setting is you want to use. So whether you want to set it at 30 or if you want to try to get 60, you would set it to whatever. So your computer is not trying to ever put the graphics at a higher speed than that. And then you have the FPS and pause menu. So when you pull up the menu, you can have it run at a slower frame because you really don't need the frame speed when it's paused because there's not a whole lot going on. So that would be pretty much how to set it to, the low end. So now let's kind of turn everything on here. Node outlining or node highlighting are both pretty much going to do the same thing, but I'm going to switch it to node highlighting here just so I can show that off. And I know I've mentioned it in some other things. Texturing, let's put that to trilinear. I personally always leave texturing with no filter because I just don't like how it looks. But we'll turn that on. We'll turn on min map and IMSO filter. Anti-aliasing, we'll put that to 8. Waving leaves I just can't stand, so I'll keep that turned off. We'll turn on normal mapping and we'll turn on bump mapping. And we'll pull this back up. And we will take a look at the differences that we see immediately. First off, I don't notice any of those hard edges from the lighting anymore. The light's going softly, and I have this little blue node selection box now, instead of just the black outline on the node. What else are we noticing that's different? The colors look a little more vibrant. That's from the tone mapping. I'm really not noticing the changes that I was supposed to get with the, well, actually if I look like at the nodes right below me here, like just below where my cursor is, I do notice that that texture is blurry, and kind of looking off in the top right and left corners, I do notice a bit of bump mapping going on. But looking at it like this, I guess on the far left, we see some bump mapping, and we do notice a little bit of blur. And that is one of the reasons why I choose to usually keep the no filters there, and I usually keep that turned off. And I usually keep that turned off. Because when we play with it like that, our pixel textures continue looking pixely. And the normal map, or the bump mapping here, kind of just looks goofy on grass. It is something that is generated as you play, so I'm going to turn normal mapping and bump mapping both off. And we will go back in game. And here, this is what I usually use when I play. Now again, we're still seeing about 190 frames a second. Let's run over to where these trees are a little more. Put viewing range back to 200. And now we are noticing that the frames are dropping down to about 100 frames a second. When I'm running around and doing stuff, 110 is up to about 130 peak. Now, I should mention I am doing this on a relatively powerful computer. I don't think anything's using any GPU, because I don't think anything's passed on to the GPU, but I could be wrong on that. But just for the sake of full disclosure, I have an i5 processor in here. I have 32 gigs RAM, which really is not affecting anything at all because Minetest is currently using 2% of my RAM, and my overall system utilization of RAM is only 6%. So it definitely does not need 32 gigs of RAM. Minetest is using a quarter of my processing power. Quad core, I don't remember offhand what the gigahertz rating is, but I'm still getting extremely good frames per second. Oh, and I should mention, obviously, I'm also screen capping this. So that really says more about my system than probably most. If you have a gaming rig, you'll be able to put this at the top settings, and you're not going to have to worry about a thing as far as performance goes. Now, my laptop, on the other hand, I couldn't do this and get anywhere near this kind of frame rates. I would usually be keeping a lot of the stuff I have turned on here turned off because my laptop is like 6 years old. It can't handle this much different processing and everything that's going on. So, with kind of going over some of those, let's take a look at some more of these advanced settings here. First, we hop in and we see it's broken down into 4 categories. It's a little checkbox on here. I'm going to leave that turned off because technical names. Actually, let me show you once when it's open what the difference is. It's really not big. We have the client, which of course is going to be, the client. What we are looking at right here. This is all client. When we connect to a single or to a server, we are just a client. The server is pretty much handling all the processing. Client just is displaying graphics, doing the audio. So under your client tab, you're going to have your controls. It's going to be all your mouse controls, keyboard, enable, build, where stand. It's pretty much going to let you stand someplace and put a node right where you are. Free move and fast move, those are enableable if you have the privileges with K and J on your keyboard. Build where you stand, I don't believe there's a key for that. No clip, you can turn on and off with H, again, assuming you have the privilege. That'll let you fly through the ground. Cinematic smooths the camera out. So I believe that's F8 to configure that on and off. And then we have 2 levels of the camera smoothing here. Smoothens the rotation of a camera. 0 disables it, so rotation wouldn't be smoothed at all at the moment. So let's change that to, 4. That's probably way too high. Then we have cinematic camera smoothing. Oh, never mind. So this is smoothing if we don't have cinematic turned on. So that should probably stay 0. Invert mouse. I don't even know why that's a thing anymore, but I guess some people like when they move their mouse up for the cursor to move down. I've never understood why that exists. Auxiliary 1 descends is disabled. I'm not really sure what that is. Oh. Well, here we go. So let's take a look at this, because this makes a lot more sense for not being there. I don't know why it says it's disabled, because that should be shift. Shift is the key. But that's not for descending, that's just for or it is just for descending, not climbing. But technical names, this is like the names that are in the config file, where you can change it all just with a text editor. And then if you're doing it here, this is the names you get. Random input, I don't even know what that is. Like, why would you want something to randomly input stuff? I don't know. Double tap jump for fly. So usually you use spacebar for jump. You can double tap it, and that'll turn fly on. It can be annoying if you're building and you're in the air, and you are using free mode, and you accidentally double tap space without trying to, and suddenly you start falling and possibly die. I've done that a few times. I'd rather just stick with using the keyboard shortcuts to turn it on and off instead of double tapping. So this is pretty much all control things. And of course you have keyboard controls too, but those are elsewhere on the previous screen. We have network, which pretty much tells you which servers to connect to. Now the server Minetest.tv, that is just the most recent one I've connected to, gives me the port. Whether or not you want to show older servers. So currently we have 0.4.14 released. If you enable this, you can see like the 4.13, 4.12, 4. Back to however old exists listed. No, necessarily, it's not necessarily going to work perfectly if you connect to an older server. But you have that saving map received from server is disabled. I believe that is going to actually save the map onto your hard drive if you have that enabled. We're moving right along. Show entity selection boxes. This is going to be obviously just what it says. As are most of these, it's usually pretty self-explanatory. They do a pretty good job on that. But if you have this enabled, you will get a selection box on an entity, which would be Lua entities, your mobs if you have mobs, potentially other players. I'm not 100% sure on that. And then items laying on the ground. So you can enable it or disable it here. Connects to external media server. I actually have no idea what that means. Absolutely no idea what that means. By default, it's enabled. I would probably leave it that way. I'm guessing it has something to do with like getting media for the server, but I don't mean like all the textures and the sounds and models and stuff, but I don't know. You have a server list URL, which this is again going to be, or not again, but this is going to be where it goes to find a list of servers. So it just looks at server.minetest.net, and that if we like actually visit that website in a web browser, I'm assuming you'll pretty much get some kind of a file that just gonna have all the IPs and like the descriptions and you got like the 3 little options, whether it's creative, PvP, and then I think like the number of players allowed, and that would just be showing there, and probably a plain text, and it parses it and populates the list. And then server list file. This is actually a file saved on your computer with servers that you have connected to. Then we can go on to graphics in-game, and we kind of looked at some of these before. We have the basic, which these are pretty much all available on that previous screen. All right, so yeah, I'm not really sure what VBO stands for. It's supposed to be basic, but I don't know what that. Ooh, you know what? Let's see what technical name says. Maybe that would just enable VBO. I really don't know. I can't tell you on that one. But again, this is all just on that first screen. Filtering is pretty much all on that first screen as well. Shaders, we have the option for shaders, and we have some basic options for these. Tone mapping, that's pretty much, it's like an HDR thing, so it pretty much just bumps up the saturation levels, is what it does. Bump mapping, you can enable it, we can generate them. Minetest game no longer ships with bump maps for the textures, so either you need to use a texture pack that has bump maps, or you have to just generate them. Parallax occlusion. No, I'm not actually positive what that means. It's something for something, but I don't know, so I won't even talk about it. Waving nodes, waving water. I like that. Waving water heights, the length, the speed, from just how the water's going to wave. And then waving leaves and plants. You really don't get any options on. They just wave or don't wave. I love the waving plants because they look fine. Waving leaves just look goofy to me because you got this whole node just kind of moving around in the air, and it's just weird. Again, we're back to the maximum FPS and the minimum FPS here. I'm just going to drop this down to 60. No reason to make my computer try to do 200 frames a second when I'm not filming at that. Field of view, VSync. You can disable, you can enable. Field of view in degrees. Basically, if you set this really high, you'll get like a fisheye effect. Gamma. Gamma is a good thing to know about. Depending on your monitor, you may have issues where you can't see anything. So, just because it's too dark. So you can set the gamma lower and it'll make things brighter. And we will look at that in 1 second here. Video driver. I'm on Linux, so I'm going to use OpenGL. If you're using Windows, you may want to use DirectX or Direct3D, D8 or D9. I don't know. OpenGL is probably still a good option. Experiment, see what works best for you. Cloud height, that's just how high the clouds are going to be in the sky. The radius. View bobbing, that's kind of when you walk around, the camera kind of moves a little bit. You can tweak it. You can turn it off. All right there just by setting that. And then fall bobbing, I guess, either as you're falling, you bob around, I'm assuming. And then 3D mode. 3D mode is cool. I've done one video in 3D. Here's all your different options. You can do anaglyph, interlaced, top, bottom, side by side, page flip. The anaglyphs just can be where you're wearing those cayenne and magenta glasses. I believe that's what 2 colors they are. And then you'd have interlace where you'd have to wear the special glasses, I think. Top, bottom, I don't even know how you would use that. Side by side, I think you would use in like a VR headset. And then page flip, I really don't know. I'm assuming on some of these you'd have to have a monitor that specifically is, it's a monitor that supports 3D, because I think some of these you need that type of a monitor to actually get that effect. I don't have those though, so I don't know. Selection box color, selection box width. You can change the colors. You have to know what the string would be in RGB. And you also can change the color of your crosshairs. Again, you have to know in RGB. Currently it's set to 255, which I believe is going to be a white crosshair. Setting everything to 0 would be black, and setting it to 170-ish or so will give you a grayish color, and you can change it to anything you want. Colored fog, min-map, scan height, round minimap, just whether or not you want to allow these things, which why wouldn't you? Inventory animations, I forgot to turn that on prior, so I'll turn that on now. And then ambient occlusion gamma, the strength, and then it says darkness of node ambient occlusion shading. Lower is darker, higher is lighter. You can do 0.25 to 4 if it's out of range, meaning either below 0.25 or positive 4. It will just set it to either of those two. And then, yeah, so we are currently at in-game, advanced, and that. So let's go throw the game up again here. And look at the waving leaves. They kind of just like float around in space, which is why I dislike them. Our little waving plant right there. I honestly forget why we were... Oh, cinematic. Let's turn cinematic on. Okay, cinematic is disabled right now, so pretty much as I move the mouse, everything happens exactly. Turn cinematic on. It kind of has a little bit of slowdown to when it starts up, and then a teeniest bit of a slowdown when it stops. Oh, because I have no clip on. Forgot about that. So I can fly through the ground. Didn't really want to do that, but turn no clip off so we can't anymore. Oh, yeah, we were going to look at the gamma difference here. That's why we were logging on. So let's the time to 1800. And it's pretty much pitch black where we can't see anything. If we go back, I forget which we were under here. Here we were advanced gamma. If we change this, we'll do it. Oh, sorry, numpad doesn't work. Just change it down to 1, and we'll see if the night is any brighter. All right, so we can see a little bit more, not a whole lot though. And now if we change could change the time to, we'll just say midday. Honestly, don't even notice that it's a whole lot brighter here in midday. Definitely noticing the cinematic going right now. And while it's probably good, I dislike it, so I'm going to turn it off. And accidentally change what view I have of my character. Ew, what ugly water. This is what happens when you have non-transparent water. You get this ugly, looks like it's something out of an old 8-bit game. Okay, back to the settings. We're about halfway through, people. So I probably should have done this with just doing a lot of chops on that thing. Okay, I don't know I opened that. We were still in client. Graphics. We had no, here we were. Yeah, advanced. That's where we were. Okay. So we have menu options, whether or not you want to see clouds. They won't happen till we save this or go back. Scaling. This would be something more, and I don't even know if this is going to, yeah, it does. So if you need the text to be larger for whatever reason, you can change that. I'm just going to leave it at 1. You know what? Let's put it up to like 1.2. Should have done this originally so the text would be larger so you guys could all see this easier on YouTube. Oh well, whatever. GUI scaling factor. GUI scaling filtered TX2 immigrant. No idea what that means. Tooltip delay, 400 milliseconds. That means, of course, none of these are going to have tooltips on them. But it just says how long you have to hover your cursor over a button to get the tooltip to pop up. Free type fonts are enabled. Font path, this is where it's going to look for the fonts. You have a font size, font shadow, font alpha, monospace font, fallback font. Pretty much just a lot of stuff that's from fonts here. Where you want to save screenshots, and then the format, you can select between actually a bunch right now. It had been at one point just PNG or JPEG, but that looks like they've added bitmap, PCX, I don't know what that is, PPM, and Targa, I believe is what TGA is. So you can change what format your screenshots are saved in, and the screenshot quality. 0 is going to be default, 1's worst, 100's best. This only works for JPEG though, because JPEG is a lossy format. The rest of these are all lossless. So it only affects JPEGs when you do that. If we go to advanced, we can change the DPI, which is dots per inch. This is pretty much going to be just for Android, or if you have a super high resolution screen where you need to, I believe you would be, if you increase the dots per inch, you'll get smoother edges. So I think you would be increasing that, but I also feel like that's going to make everything display smaller, so I have to make the GUI larger. Not positive. I don't have a 4K screen, and I obviously am not doing this on Android, so I don't know, but that is what that would change. Sound, whether or not you want it enabled or disabled, and the volume. Advanced, map block, unload, timeout. Okay, so basically, when you play the game, you get map blocks. And that's, I believe it's a 16 by 16 by 16 chunk of nodes. If you're using any kind of machine, if you've got anything with any ABMs, which active block modifiers, so like grass growing, I don't know what else, like crops, those all use ABMs to grow. If you have a map block unload timeout, this is in seconds. So in every 10 minutes, if there's a map block that you have not visited, it'll be cleared from memory. So it'll help your computer or server, if you're running a server, it'll help it run it faster and more efficiently if you put this value lower. Of course, if a player is going between two areas, you're going to be keeping resending that data all over to those clients for them to reaccess that area. But if you have a map block unloaded, ABMs don't run in it. So it's kind of a trade-off of, do I want performance or do I want things happening in parts of the map where I haven't been for a while? Map block limit, this is pretty much just going to be how many map blocks the client will keep in memory. Default's 5,000. Basically, again, tweaking this is just going to change how much data has to be transferred between server and client when you are going around. Debug info, of course you want debug info enabled, but maybe you don't. Maybe you're not a developer and you just want to play the game and you're tired of seeing all these errors showing everywhere. In that case, you can turn debug info off and you won't see any of it. Server single player, this would be if you are making a server, you would put the server name in, you'd put a description, the address, the URL, whether you want to announce it or not. Now, announcing a server just means you're letting servers.minetest.net know the server exists. You can leave that disabled and tell people the URL to your server and they'll still be able to play it. But if they just go onto the servers tab, your server won't be listed in there. So you can kind of keep it somewhat private that way. Everybody won't know about it. Network, I haven't really done any server stuff, so I'm not too positive on everything here. But server port, so it would obviously be what port they're going to look for. Strict protocol checking, I believe this one changes, yeah, for clients. So you can enable that and only let clients of the same version connect. So only people running 4.14 would be able to connect if I had that enabled. Remote media. Yeah, I don't really know what that means. IPv6, whether you want to use IPv6 or IPv4. Obviously, if IPv6 is disabled, it's going to fall back to IPv4. We have advanced, which is just how many blocks we'll send to somebody at a time. How many blocks we'll send at a time total for multiple players. Full block send, enable min time from building. I don't know what that means. I don't run a server. I don't know what a lot of stuff means. Maximum users, that's basically saying how many people you'll allow to connect. Map seed is going to be obviously your map seed. Default password, I think you would just leave that blank. What your privileges you want to be for people when they join. Whether or not you're going to enable PvP. If you're going to use a static spawn point, you need to put it here so everybody always spawns at that spot. Not a bad idea. Anti-cheating, rollback recording. That basically, if you catch somebody griefing fast enough, you can kick them off, roll back the server to before they started griefing, and you can fix it. We have shutdown messages. They'll see that when the server shuts down. If it crashes, you'll get this error. You can have it ask if they want to reconnect after a crash. You just enable that. It'll ask them. Time speed. This is basically how long a day is going to last. How often it saves the map. Setting this. If we set this number lower, the map will be saved more often, but it's going to create a little more load on the server. If we set it lower, it's less load on the server, but if there's a crash in the world, more data will be lost. It's a trade-off. Physics, pretty much how fast you're going to go, how slow you go when you're crouching, climbing speed, jumping speed, what the gravity speed is, liquids, things like that. And then here we have a bunch of advanced stuff, which I really don't know too much about. So, you know, we're just going to ignore that, pretend that part doesn't exist, because I don't know what that is. We have options for map gens. Woohoo! All these different map gens you can use. You can, of course, select that when you create a world. You can pick what map gen you want to use. Water level. This is at what elevation that the water surface will be at. Water is, generally speaking, on, I think, all map gens but valleys. The water always going to run in the same plane. So here it'll run at level 1. If you want the water towel to be higher, you set it higher. If you want it lower, obviously you set it lower. It's pretty simple. Max block generate distance. This is, yep, a map block is 16 nodes. You'd have it set out farther. So as you're walking around, it will generate more map blocks. Or you can set it lower. Again, it's going to be a trade-off. If you set it higher, it's going to be a stronger draw on the server, but it's going to look a little smoother because you'll see stuff in the distance sooner. Map generation limit. I don't know where the map generator stops. Really don't know what that is. Map flags. You can have caves, you can have dungeons, lights, decorations, or you can have no caves, no dungeons, no lights, no decorations. Right now I am getting dungeons in here, but I won't have caves, I don't have lights, I don't have decorations. I guess. So, that is tweakable as well. We have some advanced settings, which, again, I'm not going to know too much about. This is all map gen stuff. I'm not a map gen person. But you got lots and lots of options here as far as your map gens, and you can tweak everything and play around with the values, and really just get a lot of different things going on. Like you can change the size of the rivers and valleys map gen here, change the size of caves, and everything. You can tweak your noise values. Again, I have no idea what this stuff means. Your formula, offset, scale, and then your 3 spreads, seed octaves, and persistence. So, yeah, like I said, I have no idea what that means, but you can pretty much change everything. Security, you can enable mod security. If you enable that, you have to list trusted mods that can use insecure functions, which basically would be anything that is either downloading a file off the internet or trying to access files on the hard drive. Would be what you need trusted mods for. And then actually I think the HTTP, yes, these are the ones that will allow to download and upload to and from internet. And then trusted would be ones that are modifying things on your hard drive outside of, obviously, the world file. So, to my knowledge, there aren't any mods that exist on the forums that are going to do anything malicious. I think people tend to kind of look at things a little bit before they just nilly-willy download. So, I think you'll be safe, but, you know, it's a good thing to have as an option. Client and server, player name, that's going to be your name. Language. You can change what language all of your options here are in. Of course, I'm going to leave it in English because I speak English. Debug log level. You can change that to pretty much give you everything. Or you can change it that the debug doesn't give you anything. Because I do development, I'm going to leave it. Well, I didn't say PPM, did I? I said verbal. Maybe that's what PPM stands for. Yes, it does. All right, and then we have an advanced tab here, which this is timeouts for downloading. And then URLs where it's going to look for the mod store, which I still think doesn't work. And then mods can actually put menus into here as well. So for example, I have 3 different mods installed that put menus here, and they will just put their stuff in, and then you just change those values, and yeah, everything works like that. And then of course technical names is still just giving you technical names. Yeah, see if we go to mods. Yeah, I don't think the mod store exists. I'm not sure why we still have an option for the mod store when we don't have... Yeah, there's not a mod store. I can uninstall things, but I can't download and install things. So I don't know why those options exist, because there's not a mod store. Yeah, that about wraps this up, and it went longer than most, at like 35-ish minutes, but a lot of material to cover. Next week we will be back to normal stuff, so you have that to look forward to if this totally bored you. Thanks for watching my video. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, would you consider giving it a thumbs up? I appreciate all those I can get. I'm on social media, peoples. Follow me. Google+, Twitter, Facebook. I always post all of my videos on those platforms, or links to my videos on those platforms, as soon as they go live. Which this means prior to the release on YouTube. You can watch them before anybody else. You can also visit my website, nathansalpat.com, and see all my videos there. A really nice website if I do say so myself. I
did design it, so I might be a little bit biased, but I still think it's decent. If there is a mod you would like me to review, just click on the Request Review button right there. Takes you to a form on my website. You just type in the information, hit the Submit button. I get it, look at it, record a review, post it online. You watch. We all profit. The world's a better place. Yeah, I don't know about that last bit, but hey, do it anyways. You got nothing to lose. I'll catch you next time.